I noticed her before she ever spoke to me, the way she stood near the window, half turned toward the light, fingers brushing the frame like she was testing the air for something she'd lost. There was nothing loud about her. No perfume, no bright colors. Just stillness, the kind that makes everything else in the room seem too noisy. She was older, mid-40s maybe, though time hadn't softened her so much as refined her. Her voice, when she finally did speak, carried a kind of control that felt dangerous, the kind that makes you want to listen even when you shouldn't. "Could you hand me that brush?" she asked, eyes on the painting she was restoring. I passed it to her. Our fingers touched for half a second, maybe less, but my pulse reacted like she'd said my name. Working at the gallery had always been quiet work, oil, varnish, muted conversations about color. But when Elena arrived, quiet began to feel like something else entirely. Like holding your breath for too long. She was careful with everything she touched. Paintings. Words. People. When she spoke to me, it was usually with a faint smile that looked practiced, like she'd learned long ago that people expected her to look composed, even when she wasn't. I told myself I was just curious, that it wasn't anything beyond fascination, but the truth was, every time she leaned close enough for me to smell the faint scent of turpentine and citrus on her hands, I forgot what I'd been doing. One evening, the others had gone home early. The lights were low, the kind that make everything gold, and a little unreal. I stayed behind to finish inventory, she stayed to clean her brushes. The silence stretched, not awkward, just aware. "You work too much," she said softly, without looking at me. "So do you," I answered. She almost smiled, but didn't. "That's different." I wanted to ask what she meant, but the air between us felt too delicate to push. Instead, I just watched her, the way the light caught the small lines near her eyes, the tiny flecks of paint on her wrist. She caught me looking. Didn't look away. There was no flirting in her gaze. Just a calm, dangerous honesty, the kind that makes you wish you were someone steadier than you are. When she finally spoke again, her voice was lower. "You remind me of someone I used to know." I tried to laugh, to make it sound easy. "Should I take that as a compliment?" She shook her head slowly. "You shouldn't take it as anything." Her hand brushed against mine again as she set a clean brush on the table. It wasn't intentional. Or maybe it was. The kind of touch that says more than words ever could, warm, brief, but impossibly clear. Something shifted in the air, small but irreversible. The kind of moment you only recognize later, when you realize you've started remembering someone in fragments. The way they breathe, the way they look at nothing for too long. A faint sound broke the silence, the click of the gallery's front door unlocking. Elena straightened, her expression rearranging itself in an instant. Composed again. Distant. "Someone's early," she murmured, gathering her things. But before she turned away completely, she looked at me one last time, and for a second, her eyes said something her voice never would. Something I couldn't name. And then she was gone. It started to happen in small, unguarded ways. The way she'd pass by my desk and let her hand rest on the edge for a second too long. The way she'd say my name, quiet, deliberate, like she was making sure it still belonged to me. I told myself it was nothing. That I was imagining the weight in her voice. But every day that she didn't speak much, and every night I couldn't stop replaying how she looked when she did, the truth became harder to ignore. Elena wasn't married. I found that out accidentally. A coworker mentioned it, half in gossip, half in pity. "Divorced," they said. "Years ago. She doesn't talk about it." After that, I noticed the way she avoided talking about herself. How she always turned conversations toward the art, or the weather, or me. Especially me. One afternoon, while we were cataloging a new exhibit, I caught her staring at one of the paintings, a woman sitting alone at a cafe table, her hand wrapped around a cup she hadn't touched. "She looks tired," I said. Elena's gaze softened. "She's waiting," she murmured. "For what?" Her voice barely carried. "For something she knows she shouldn't want." She didn't look at me when she said it, but she didn't have to. There was an unspoken rule between us: don't get too close. Maybe because we both knew how easily that line could blur. When she leaned over my shoulder to adjust the frame of a painting, I felt the heat of her breath skim my neck. I tried not to move, not to react, but my hands froze in place. "Like this," she said, her fingers brushing mine as she steadied the frame. The contact was brief, professional, probably innocent, but my mind betrayed me. Every small touch felt deliberate. Every silence between us felt like something building. She stepped back, and I caught her watching me from the corner of her eye. A quick glance, sharp and guilty, like she'd realized what had just passed between us, and decided to pretend it hadn't. The risk wasn't just the age gap. It was what it meant. She had a life behind her, losses, mistakes, stories I didn't know how to ask about. I was only beginning mine. Sometimes, when we closed up the gallery together, I'd catch her looking out at the street, where the lights blurred through the windows. There was always a faint melancholy in her eyes, like she was watching a memory she couldn't step back into. Once I asked softly, "Do you ever think about leaving?" She looked at me for a long time before answering. "All the time," she whispered. Then, after a pause that felt too heavy to hold, "But I never do." That night, as we locked the door, our hands met on the same key. She didn't pull away. Neither did I. Her skin was cool against mine, her pulse steady, and for the first time, she didn't hide the look in her eyes, that small, unspoken confession neither of us had the courage to voice. The key slipped from her fingers. And when she bent to pick it up, she smiled faintly, not out of humor, but out of surrender. A quiet, fragile moment that said, "We've already gone too far." It was raining the next evening, the kind of soft, steady rain that makes the city sound half asleep. The gallery felt warmer than usual, the windows fogged from the damp air outside. Elena was standing by the doorway, her coat draped over her arm, waiting for the rain to ease before leaving. "You'll be here a while," I said, glancing at the downpour. She smiled faintly. "I don't mind waiting." Something about the way she said it, low, patient, made the air between us feel heavier. I turned back to the shelves, pretending to organize, but I could feel her watching me. Every small sound, her breathing, the rustle of her sleeve, the quiet click of her shoes, drew my attention without permission. When I looked up again, she was beside me, close enough for the faint scent of her perfume to cut through the rain-soaked air. She reached for the same box I was holding, our hands brushing. We both froze. Her fingers stayed there, not gripping, not pulling away, just resting against mine. The smallest contact, but it felt electric. "Sorry," I said, my voice unsteady. She shook her head, eyes on the box instead of me. "Don't be." A sudden knock shattered the moment. We jumped apart just as the door opened and a coworker poked his head in. "Still here? Thought everyone left hours ago." Elena's tone returned to neutral in an instant. "We were finishing up inventory." "Right." He grinned. "Well, don't work too hard." He left as quickly as he came, but the interruption left an echo. The rain sounded louder now, the silence thicker. She exhaled, a soft, shaky breath that didn't match her composed posture. "That was close," she murmured. "Yeah." I tried to laugh, but it came out uneven. Neither of us moved. The rain blurred the city outside into streaks of light and shadow. Inside, the air was too warm, the space between us too small. She leaned against the table, arms crossed, like she was trying to anchor herself. "You shouldn't look at me like that," she said quietly. "How do I look at you?" Her eyes lifted, and for a second, the mask dropped, her expression open, raw. "Like you don't care what happens next." I wanted to tell her she was wrong. That I cared too much. That I thought about it every time I tried not to. But my words caught somewhere between my chest and my throat. She moved first, a small step closer, close enough for her sleeve to brush my arm. Her voice barely carried. "This isn't supposed to happen." "I know." But neither of us stepped back. Her breath hitched when I whispered her name. My hand hovered, almost touching her face, but stopped short, the distance between us now a thread, trembling, alive. Then her phone buzzed on the table. She turned away fast, the spell broken. I should go. I nodded, though I didn't move either. As she reached for her coat, her hand trembled. I almost said something, anything to stop her, but she looked at me, eyes uncertain, and whispered, "Don't make it harder." She slipped out into the rain. And for a long time, I stood there, staring at the door she'd closed, feeling the warmth of her still in the room, and realizing that the distance we were trying to keep was already gone. The days after the rain felt strangely hollow. She avoided staying late, kept her distance, spoke less. But the silence between us wasn't empty, it pulsed with everything we hadn't said. When she finally asked me to help move some pieces for a new exhibit, I knew it wasn't just about the work. She could have asked anyone. The studio lights were dim, the air thick with varnish and dust. We moved paintings together in near silence, our shoulders brushing as we passed in the narrow space. At one point, I turned too quickly and almost collided with her. My hand shot out to steady her, palm flat against her arm, fingers curling before I could stop them. She froze. "You shouldn't," she started, but her voice broke on the word. "I know," I whispered, my hand still on her. She tried to laugh it off, but it came out uneven. "This isn't who I am, Noah." "Then who are you?" I asked, quieter now. "Because every time I try to see you the way everyone else does, I can't." Her eyes flicked up, startled. "You don't understand what this could mean." "Then explain it to me." "I can't." The words landed sharp, final, but she didn't move away. Instead, her breath faltered. Her hand brushed her hair back, and my fingers followed almost instinctively, tucking a strand behind her ear. The small gesture felt too intimate, too heavy, but I couldn't take it back. Her eyes closed. Just for a heartbeat. "You're making this impossible," she whispered. "I'm not the only one." She stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from her skin. Her scent, faint citrus and something softer, filled the small space. "This can't happen," she said, voice shaking. But when I said her name, she looked at me like she'd already made peace with losing control. Her fingers grazed mine, slow, uncertain. We both knew what it meant. She tried to pull away, but I caught her hand, not forcefully, just enough to stop the motion. Our fingers tangled, clumsy and human. "I can't stop thinking about you," I said, barely audible. She drew in a sharp breath, not from surprise but recognition. Like she'd been waiting to hear it, and dreading it at the same time. Something cracked open between us then, no more pretense, no more distance. She reached up, touching the edge of my collar, tracing it like she needed to memorize it. "I told myself I wouldn't do this again," she whispered. "Do what?" "Feel something I shouldn't." The confession hung between us, trembling in the air. I leaned closer, slow, cautious, my hand finding her jaw, her skin warm beneath my fingertips. Her eyes met mine, wide, uncertain, wanting. For a second, the world shrank to the sound of our breathing. And just as I thought she closed the distance, she pulled back, barely, her lips parted, a whisper escaping. "Noah, don't." But her hand didn't let go of mine. We stood there, inches apart, suspended between what we wanted and what we shouldn't want, a breath away from crossing the line we both already knew we'd never be able to uncross. The next morning, she wasn't at the gallery. Her absence hung in the air like humidity, heavy, invisible, and impossible to ignore. By afternoon I found out why. Someone had seen us that night, or thought they had. A coworker mentioned it casually, too casually. "You and Elena were here late again, huh? You two seemed close." The words were light, but the tone wasn't. I tried to laugh it off, but my chest tightened. When Elena finally arrived, she moved differently, careful, contained. Her eyes flicked toward me once, but there was distance there now. Measured. Guarded. "We need to talk," she said quietly, not looking up from the table. We stepped into the small back room, where the smell of varnish clung to everything. Her voice was calm at first, too calm. Someone came to me this morning. Asked if I was seeing you. My stomach dropped. Who? It doesn't matter. She set her hands on the table, gripping the edge like she needed the steadiness. You know what this looks like, don't you? Me, middle-aged, divorced, and you, me what? Young. Naive. A distraction? The words stung more than I expected. I stepped closer, but she lifted her hand slightly, a silent warning to stop. Don't, she said. Please. Her voice wavered on that last word. You think I don't know what people will say? She continued, quieter now. They'll think I'm. She broke off, pressing her hand to her temple. I can't do this again. Again? I asked. Her eyes snapped to mine. The answer was there before she spoke. There was someone. She admitted, voice barely above a whisper. Years ago. I thought it was different then too. It cost me everything. She turned away, shoulders rigid. I told myself I'd never be that person again. The room went still. The only sound was the soft hum of the old lights overhead. I wanted to reach out, to touch her, to tell her she wasn't the same person anymore, but my hands stayed at my sides. Elena, I said finally. I'm not him. She let out a shaky breath, eyes glistening. No. But I might be her. That broke something in me, the way she said it, with quiet dread instead of drama. I took a step closer, closing the space between us until she had to look at me. My hand hovered near her arm, not touching, just there, waiting. Her fingers twitched, then slowly reached for mine, brushing against my wrist. The contact was tentative, trembling. I don't know what I'm doing, she whispered. Neither do I said. But I know what I want. She swallowed hard. And if wanting ruins us? Then at least it'll be honest. She didn't answer. Not with words. But when she finally exhaled, her forehead rested against mine, just barely, her breath warm against my skin. A fragile, dangerous truce formed in that silence, either surrender nor retreat, just the quiet certainty that whatever came next, either of us could undo it. Outside, footsteps echoed down the hall, voices, movement, but neither of us moved. The decision was already made, even if either of us had spoken it aloud. White heavy checkmark prompt 7, the conclusion, emotional resolution, 500 words, writing prompt, close the story in a sensual but satisfying way. Instructions, resolve all threads, fears, doubts, and the age gap hesitation. Let the ending feel warm, believable, and sensual, maybe a long hug, a hand intertwined, a forehead kiss, or sitting close together at last. Avoid over-formality. Keep it natural and human. End with them together in a clear, emotionally fulfilling resolution. Close with these engagement questions for YouTube. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next? The morning after the storm, the world looked different, quieter somehow, as if the city itself had been rinsed clean. The gallery was nearly empty when I arrived. I half expected her not to be there, half dreaded, half hoped. But she was. Standing near the same window where I'd first seen her months ago, the soft light tracing her profile like it belonged there. For a while neither of us spoke. I think we were both waiting for the other to pretend last night hadn't happened. But the silence between us had changed. It wasn't heavy anymore. It was full. Morning, I said. She turned, and the faintest smile touched her lips. You came early. I couldn't sleep. Her gaze flickered, as if she understood exactly what I meant. There was still uncertainty between us, not the same fear of being seen, but something gentler. The awareness that what we'd chosen wasn't perfect, but it was ours. She crossed the room, slowly, her movements careful but not cautious. When she stopped in front of me, she hesitated, just a breath, before reaching up to fix the collar of my shirt. A small, ordinary gesture that somehow felt like a promise. You're quiet, she said softly. So are you. She smiled again, a little wider this time. Maybe we don't need to talk so much anymore. We spent the morning working side by side, but it wasn't like before. The air felt lighter, every small movement charged with a quiet, mutual ease. Her hand brushed mine when we passed tools back and forth, not an accident this time. When we finally stopped for coffee, she sat on the edge of the desk beside me. Steam rose between us. "Do you regret it?" I asked, not looking at her. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached over, resting her hand on mine, fingers sliding naturally into place, as if they'd been waiting. "No," she said simply. "Do you?" I shook my head. "I think I'd regret pretending it never happened." Something in her relaxed then. She leaned closer, resting her forehead against mine, a small, quiet surrender. The scent of coffee, the faint hum of the city outside, the warmth of her breath, it all blurred together into something soft and real. "You know," she murmured, "this isn't going to be easy." "I know. But maybe it doesn't have to be impossible either." We stayed like that for a long moment, her thumb tracing circles against my hand, my eyes closed, memorizing the weight of her against me. No grand declarations, no perfect ending. Just the kind of closeness that doesn't need words. When she finally pulled back, her smile held something I hadn't seen before: peace. "Let's get back to work," she said, her voice light but warm. And as we moved side by side, the distance that had once felt so dangerous now felt natural, inevitable, as if it had always been leading here.